So I'm gonna go ahead and record it. All right, so it's recording. We're good now. The pressure's on because it's recording, so can't screw up the whole time. All right, so if you guys have a notepad or if you want to take notes on your phone, it might just be helpful. But we're gonna do a training. We're gonna do just a training on classroom management. And the reason I wanted to do this sooner rather than later is because we're getting new families and we're getting more kids into our children's ministries, and sometimes some of those kids do not have all of the good parent structure that we see with our other kids who can really like fall in line and they know exactly what to expect at a children's ministry. Some of our new kids are very not knowing what to expect, and it's very hard to control them and try to teach a lesson when you've got a bunch of different kids who don't know what a system is, and so they all kind of just do their own thing. So I just want to take a couple of, well, I was going to say a couple minutes. I'm going to take about 50 minutes and just talk about some classroom management, and then I'm going to leave some time open at the end for some questions. If you guys have questions about any of your kids and how to handle certain situations, I'll leave that space open at the end for that. Okay? Good? Okay. So if you don't know what classroom management is, it's kind of like teaching 101. It's a term used to talk about all of the things that teachers do to make sure your classroom runs really smoothly. So that could be anything from transitioning, it can be anything from what you say to the kids to get them involved in the story, it can be what you do to the environment in the classroom to make it like the most conducive for learning. So when you're teaching your lesson, it's probably not a good idea to have toys all surrounding the children, because what are they going to play with? The toys, right? They're going to play with toys because they're so much more interesting than just sitting there and staring when you can be fiddling with something. So it's just everything that you do to make classroom management. It's every little thing that you do to make an effective classroom. And so classroom management is hard. If you guys haven't got that already, it is difficult. It's not something where you're like, oh yeah, kids, come on, and they all just jump on board and are good with everything. That's not normally how classroom management is. It doesn't come naturally, and it takes practice. And so I wanted to talk about 3 things about classroom management that will help you and your kids in your class be better followers of your leader or of your leadership, and you will feel a lot more competent in the classroom, and you'll be able to handle more kids. The better you are with classroom management, the more kids you can handle in your class. Okay, so I want to talk about the first one is having clear expectations. One thing that I like to do before I start teaching, before I do anything, is I like to talk about rules, especially if we have new kids. So I'll briefly walk them through the day for about 30 seconds. I won't take 5 minutes to talk about it, but I'll say, here's kind of what you're going to see today. You're going to see coming into this room for elementary, it comes in after worship. So after worship, you'll go into the room. We'll do our story. We'll have a game. It'll be awesome. And then what we'll do after that is we'll do a craft. We'll pray, and then we'll finish. It's something super quick like that, but it just gives them, I don't know if you guys are one of those kids in elementary school, but I always loved when the teacher wrote down exactly what we were going to do on the board, so I could like mentally look at it and go, okay, check, we did that, check, we did that, and I kind of knew where we were going with our day. And sometimes kids need that to feel comfortable, to feel competent, to feel like they can control what's going to happen. They like to know what's happening. So even just with new kids walking through the systems that you go through, it can do wonders for your classroom management. It can help them focus better. It can help them pay attention to your lesson if they know what is expected and know what's coming. So one of the hard things about children's ministry is a lot of times they have new teachers every week, which can be a challenge because you have to make sure that everybody, hello? Okay, I'm just checking. I was like, is somebody else coming? Okay, so one of the hardest things to do is having different teachers every week and being consistent. And so something that I would like to do, and I'll buy some poster paper for this, but in each classroom, have a poster of rules on the wall, not a bunch of different hard rules and like, don't throw pencils, don't throw pens, don't look at somebody funny, don't like, not that kind of stuff, but like if you, one of the things they teach you in elementary education is that if you make the rules poster together, the kids are more likely to buy in to the rules that you're setting. And so we don't want to do more than 5 rules. More than 5 rules is too hard to follow, but less than 3 rules is too little to have. And so you can have the kids come up with generic rules. They might say no hitting, no touching, no looking, but kind of direct them into the path of, how about we keep our hands to ourselves? That sounds like a good rule to follow, you know, but they'll come up with that themselves. And if you just have 3 to 5 rules listed up on your board every day before you start, if you're having issues with your class, all you'd have to do is say, okay, remember, before we start our lesson, remember we keep our hands to ourselves. We don't talk when other people are talking, and we raise our hand if we have a question, you know, and then you just go through those, and then you just start teaching your class like normal so that everyone can just follow in line with whatever the rules are. And it helps just to every once in a while reiterate the rules to the kids, even if they're all old kids, they've all been there forever. It helps just to sometimes say, remember, when we have a question or when we want to say something, make sure we raise our hand, okay? And that will help kind of to stop the interruptions. I talked about laying out your lesson structure and times before the day if you have kids who need that. Just briefly talk about what's coming, talk about what you'll be doing, even just giving a recap of the story. Like, we're going to talk about Moses and the Israelites today. That's where we're going with our story. It's going to be awesome. And then just moving on. My number 2, so number 1 was have clear expectations. Number 2 is following through with punishments. And this seems like a weird, it seems like a weird thing to talk about, but when we don't have any consequences for any actions, our kids will constantly walk over us. Because if we don't have any follow through with anything that we do, they're just gonna eat us alive. Like one thing when I was teaching, the big, like teachers were always like, classroom management, like don't ever threaten something and then not follow through with it. I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll never do that. And then I got to my class and I started doing that. And then my kids started learning that I didn't follow through with stuff. And they started walking over me. And then I had one kid test the waters and they didn't get in trouble. So I had 3 more kids the next day test the waters. Then I had my whole class trying to test the waters. And I'm like, this is a nightmare, because all of your kids think they can push their boundaries. And then when you snap, they're like, oh, that doesn't make any sense. You didn't correct me for the last 5 times, but now you're correcting me for something. And so it's important to just have strict like guidelines that you're following of punishments. And so I have some examples, because we're not just gonna throw out punishments out there and just be like, go over here and just sit in a corner. Like, that's not what we're doing. So I have a couple of things. I wrote, kids will test the waters to see if you're serious on the punishments. And so sometimes they'll look at you, and like after you give them a punishment, they'll look at you like, is she gonna follow through? Is she actually gonna make me do this? And the answer is yes, you are going to make them do that, because they will be so much better after that point. Every person who sees that in the classroom will know that you're serious about your punishments. And when you say something, those kids will go, oh, okay, she's serious. She knows she'll definitely move me to a different classroom. And so I wrote here on the first warning, tell them what will happen if they don't start following directions. So give them a warning. It's not necessarily best practice just to snap down and be like, all right, you're done. You're out of the classroom. You know, but talk to them and give them a warning. If someone's hitting somebody, if someone's not paying attention to the story, not coming to the carpet, give them a warning and say, okay, here's what's going to happen if you don't follow directions. I'm going to have to send you out to a different classroom, and you're going to have to be in the baby room, in the elementary room, and you're just going to have to sit on the side. And we would really like you to participate today, but I'm sorry, but if you do not listen, we're going to have to put you in a different room. Okay? And they usually, hopefully, will fall in line. If they don't after that, I always give the kids a second warning just to give them extra grace. So I say, this is your second warning. If I have to talk to you a 3rd time, you're leaving my class. Do you understand? And then they usually say yes. And if I have to talk to them a 3rd time, we don't make it 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. The 3rd time, there's no grace. We say, all done. Go ahead and leave my classroom, please. And they'll look at you and they might not want to go right away, but you do it anyway. You say, I'm sorry, I'm not starting my lesson until you leave my classroom. And if you need to come and get me, or if you need to come and get anybody else who's in the other room to come and get the child to make sure they go where they're supposed to, you can. But it's not okay that we let kids distract the other kids from learning. If we have one kid who's constantly distracting our class, our kids are not learning. They're not learning any lesson. They're not learning any points that they're supposed to. You're just trying to manage behaviors. And that's just not good. You shouldn't have to do that. You shouldn't have to do that in your classroom. That's not your job. So I do 3 warnings. 1, I tell them exactly what's going to happen. 2, I remind them this is coming on the next time I have to talk to you. 3, we follow through with the punishment. They're going to probably cry and get emotional. I did this with Ellington, and y'all know Ellington. She is strong-willed. a lot of times, and she was in my class, and I called everyone to the carpet for story, and she sat and played with toys and was like near the carpet, but she was standing up and playing. And I said, Ellington, it's time to sit down. And she looked at me and she goes, but I'm gonna play. And I said, but you're not gonna play. I said, you're gonna come and sit down. And I said, I'm gonna ask you 2 more times to come and sit down. And if you don't come on that 3rd time, I'm sending you out of the classroom. And she did come, and then Deacon started standing up to play, because kids learn from other kids. That's just how it is. Kids learn bad behaviors from others, and they're like, is anything going to follow through? Is anything really going to happen? So Deacon got up, and I looked at Deacon and I said, that's not a good idea. And he sat right back down, and Ellington did not sit down. And I said, Ellington, that was your 2nd warning. I'm going to go on my 3rd warning. And she sat and still played, and I said, this is your 3rd warning. I said, you're leaving my classroom. And she looked at me and she went and sat down in the circle really quick. And I said, I'm so sorry, but you missed your opportunity. You didn't listen the 3 times, and now you have to leave my class. We're going to try again next week, though. And she walked right out the door, was cranky about it, but walked right out the door, and I never had a problem with her again. Because I was firm that one time, and you usually don't have to be firm again. If you're firm one time with the kids and you show that you're following through with your punishment, you don't have to be. And Ellington wasn't mad at me the next week. She didn't come in cranky. She came in, ran up, and did her little good morning greeting to me like she always did. She always she does this thing, goes, good morning. That's what she would do every morning to me. And so I was like, everything was fine the next week because she respected my punishment. And I didn't. When she walked in the next week, I wasn't like, I hope we're going to have a better attitude this week. I treated everything like it was normal. Everything is, after you do a punishment, one of the big things I stress is everything is normal after this. We don't treat them like they've already had a bad day. We treat it like a brand new day with the kids. If they have to go sit in timeout, if they have to go sit on the side, if they have to be transferred to a different classroom, you treat it just like normal when they come back. Or if they change their attitude, it's normal. Hey, why don't you answer one of our questions for us? It's just normal back into classroom like they never had any problems. And that's really important too, because you don't want the kids to feel like you're holding on to anger over them for multiple weeks or for a long extended period of time. Just be really matter of fact about it. So that's one of my big things, is sending kids to other classes. I would like to use the number system for parents in emergencies. If they still do not leave your classroom, if you ask them to leave on that 3rd time and they refuse, that's when you call a parent, because you can't have complete defiance in your room, because if you do, then kids learn from that. So call parents if you need to, but it's kind of a last resort. It's like when I don't have any other options, then we call parents for help, because we want our parents to love putting their kids in children's ministry, and we want our kids to love our children's ministry. We want them to love being in there, because if they don't love being in there, they're not going to want to come to church. And if their parents know that they don't want to come to church, they might find a different church, But that is not to not do punishments, because kids need structure, kids need systems, kids need routines. Okay, so I talked about having clear expectations, following through with punishments. And number 3 for the classroom management section is be prepared. And this is kind of like, I feel like it's like beating a dead horse. I hate that saying. But being prepared is so important in your class, because a lot of times you'll lose kids by looking down. Like if you don't know what the activity is, if you don't know where your materials are and you're looking down and you're trying to find it, the more you look down and look away from the kids, the more they talk to their neighbors, the more they go play with toys while you're doing that, the more that they get distracted. So if you're ready for whatever comes next in the lesson and you're prepared for it, not that you have to memorize anything, because that's not what it is. But if you are prepared, you know that prayer comes next, then you know we're reviewing, and then you know that we're going to do our game, and then you know we're going to do our story. It'll help you better walk through and help keep your kids' attention. So if you're having a problem keeping your kids' attention, just focus on being prepared for every single component. And if you have a partner in your room, which all of you do when you teach, if you want to switch off every other section, you can too. Work out with your partner who that is for the week and talk about, hey, why don't I do the prayer at the beginning, and then you do the review section, and then I can do the game, and then if you want to tell the story, that would be great, because it would give you time to prepare a little bit if you want some like mental time to prepare for what you're going to say, and that gives both teachers a chance to be heard from the kids. It gives you a chance to kind of collect your thoughts before you teach, and it kind of just helps. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. So I said, look over the lesson beforehand. Even if it's only for 10 minutes, be familiar. Since we're there at 9:15 for the VIP meeting, and I give you your binders, if you just take 5 to 10 minutes and just familiarize yourself with the content, it will do wonders for y'all's classroom management, for your teaching, if you just get familiar with kind of what you're going to be talking about that day. So that will help. All right. I'm making wonderful timing. Okay, guys, I'm really proud of myself. I tend to like either drag it on or talk 8,000 miles an hour. So, okay, so we're going to do our next section. I'm calling it Dealing with Difficult Children. And we're going to talk about specific children and talk about what we can do to help them participate in the story. And we have some of these kids now in our children's ministry. So I wanted to highlight some of these so that you guys would have strategies of what to do when they're being difficult, when they're causing problems in your classroom. So I wanted to give specific examples for you guys so we know how to handle all these situations. Sound good? Mm-hmm. All right. I wrote, we all have a child in our class. It's a little more difficult to manage. I said, you need to do something with the difficult children. We can't just ignore behaviors and be like, they'll just get better next week, or they're just having a rough day. Even if you've got great kids who have a rough day, you need to make sure you discipline them too. I think one of the hardest things when I was teaching was knowing my good kids and knowing that they never had mistakes. They usually didn't talk in class. They usually followed directions. They usually didn't get any problem, didn't have any problems with any students. Those were my hardest kids to discipline because they always are so good. But if we don't discipline for even the good kids, then we're going to run into the issue of the kids who get in trouble more often. They're going to go, well, I did that the other day and I got in trouble, but she didn't. And then we're not going to actually explain to our kids, oh, well, they're never in trouble, but you're always in trouble. That's not what we're doing. So our punishments need to be the same across the board to all of our kids. So it doesn't look like we're showing favoritism to our kids or showing I know this kid always gets in trouble. So I'm going to definitely just, I'm going to be on and ready today. I'm going to be ready to punish them. That's not a good mindset either. So just make sure your punishments are the same across the board. All right. So our first child that we're going to talk about are the emotional or the crying children who like to cry all the time. Peggy is smiling. We all know children who cry all the time, especially when they get dropped out of class and they have separation issues or they like things a certain way, and when mom and dad leave, it's really hard. I had one child give me a run for my money. I'm always I'm a very I can solve any problem. I've got it down. I can make crying babies stop crying. There was one child. So at our previous church, I had a class of 17 one-year-olds, and it was me and a partner. We were in the class, and this one little girl came in crying every week. And I was like, I am going to get her to stop crying. I can do it. I'm good at this. And so I took her in my arms, and she's crying. And she is the one child I think I've ever encountered in my whole life where I wasn't able to completely calm her down. And she'd calm down for 30 seconds. And then she'd go, and I'm like, no, not again. And so it took 10 minutes, and then it would be 30 seconds of calm, 1 minute of calm, and then they cry all over again. And it's oh my gosh, it's so hard to deal with those kinds of kids because you just feel so bad for them. They're just so emotional. You don't want them to cry the entire time they're in your class because you don't want them to have a horrible time. But at the same time, you want parents to enjoy the service. And if they're watching their kid and their kid's wandering all over the place, or if they're fussy, they're not paying attention to service. They're paying attention to their kid. And so our job as children's ministry leaders is this isn't our whole job, but we're really giving the parents a break. We want our parents to be fed in church service. We want them to enjoy the service. We don't want them to feel burdened with their children too, to try to watch them and micromanage and discipline while service is happening. So I wrote here that the kids will have separation anxiety. Our job is to calm the kid down enough to get them to enjoy children's ministry. I wrote, for crying kids, distraction is key. And Peggy, I saw you doing that with the truck. I saw you doing that with one of our little kids. Distraction is the best way to get a crying child to stop crying. One thing that I love to do is if there's another kid in the classroom, I will sit right next to the child who's crying and I'll play with the other child who's fine. And I'll play and we'll go, we're like, beep, beep, beep. And we'll just do like our normal playing time, how we normally do it. And that kid starts thinking, that looks fun. And they'll generally, even if you don't look at them, you don't talk to them, you just play next to them. A lot of times they'll just join you because they're like, hey, that looks kind of fun. And then you're not focused on them crying. You're focused on the different kids who are in the room and you're focused on making sure they have a good time, and they'll usually fall in line. If they are crying for more than 20 minutes, that's the time to call parents, because you guys shouldn't have to deal with crying for an hour to an hour and a half. That's not okay. So if they're crying for 20 minutes or more, go ahead and page the parents. If you guys don't know, or if you haven't seen already, I put little paging parents sign in each room in the children's ministry hallway, and it has Judy's number, it has Josh's number, and it has Raven's number, because those are the 3 people that work in the sound booth. And so if you just put them all in a group message and put up whatever the kid's unique code is, so sometimes it's like A5X2 on their side of their name tag. If you just type that into a group message for them, they'll put the number up on the main screen in the sanctuary. So we got that figured out. They're trained on it. Everyone in the back knows what to do on that front. So if you ever have a problem and they are crying for more than 20 minutes, just go ahead and text them that number and then just wait for a confirmation. If no one messages you back, just say, did you get this? With a question mark to make sure that they put the number up, because sometimes they don't see their message, and then you don't want to sit there for 45 minutes and be like, where's the parent? Because they might not have seen it, So that's a good way to do it. So if they don't respond in like 2 or 3 minutes, just text them. Did you get this? Did you get my message? Whatever you want to say. So distraction is key for children who are crying. And then 20 minutes is about the normal time frame before you should call. If you calm them down and they're good for a couple of minutes, for 10 minutes, and then they start crying again, don't call parents yet. Try to calm them down after that point, because you were able to distract them up until that point, and they're usually fine. A lot of times kids will cry for the first 10 minutes. They'll be fine for the whole service. They'll see mom and dad again, and they'll bawl their eyes out at the end. And you're like, what happened? You were literally just fine. And then they remember their parents, and they're like, oh, I missed you so much, kind of a thing. And so just distraction is key for crying children. My second child I want to talk to is the non-compliant children, the children who don't like to do what you ask, the children who are not necessarily trying to be disrespectful, but it comes off as disrespectful when they don't listen to your instruction. So they like to have it their way. So what we do and what we can do to help them is give them choices and make them feel like they're in control. And so something that I like to do with these types of children is I like to say, if everyone has to come to the carpet for the story, I'll say, how would we like to sit today for our story? Would you like to sit on your bottom with your legs crossed? Would you like to lay on your belly for our story today? And when you give them options, they're all still listening to the story. But when you give them options to do what they want to do, it makes them feel like they're in control. It makes them feel like, oh yeah, I get to choose what I get to do today. And that kind of mindset for the non-compliant children will make them fall in line a lot quicker. So give them options where you can. If you can't give options, obviously don't. like don't give the option like, do you want to listen to the story or do you want to play? Like that's not a good option because they're going to choose play because it's toys and they want to play and it's fun. And so my big thing is making sure you give them choices, take something away from them or send them to a different room if they're not complying after that, if they're still having problems. I wrote here, and I think this is something really important that it's not like something you would normally think about to do to calm the behaviors down, but I wrote here to give the kids leadership roles. And that doesn't make much sense because you don't want kids to model bad behavior. But a lot of times, kids love to be teachers' helpers. And so when you say something like, All right, kids, I want everyone to come and sit down for the story. And if you know you have a child who consistently doesn't come and sit down, you say, hey, could I have you come and flip my pages for me? And then they'll sit down and they'll flip your pages for you. Or you can say, hey, can you hold these pieces of our story? Just can you hold on to them? And then you can put them up as we're telling the story. I'll look at you and then you put it up. Do that kind of stuff. Or can you be our door holder today? I really need your help. Or, hey, I need some help getting kids to clean up the classroom. Can you help some of my friends clean up? That kind of stuff, if you're telling those kids that, they are much more inclined to listen to you and to be a part if you give them a job. If you make them feel like they're your helper, that's the best thing you can do for them. Make them feel like they have a really, go ahead. Hi, Abigail.
I love you guys.
We love you. Make them feel like they have a job in your classroom, and that will help a lot of the behaviors, is making them feel like your special helper, especially if you like whisper it to them too and be like, hey, I really need your help. You know, making sure that all of the crayons are picked up. Can you make sure all my crayons are picked up at the end? And you'll be amazed at how they just pick up the crayons after kids are you done using this? Okay, they'll pick up the crayons and put them away for them. And then if they'll do, you know, can we just make sure we push in chairs today? I need someone who can make sure that all the chairs are pushed in. Or cleaning at the end of the day, like even wiping down tables. Oh, you know what? Tables are so dirty. Can you help me clean off the tables? They need to be nice and clean. They'll always want to come and follow suit. I would say 99.99% of kids will respond well if you ask them to do leadership roles and they feel like they have an important part to play. Okay? Capiche? Mm-hmm. Okay. I wrote here again, calling numbers is the last resort. So if we try giving them leadership roles and it doesn't work, and we try to give them choices and it doesn't work, then you call parents. Because again, you still can't have non-compliant kids in your classroom who are just refusing to do anything. If they refuse to come to the carpet for story and they don't come, then you have to do something. Like you can't just let them not come. So last resort, just call parents and say, you know, we love having, what's their name in class? We love when they come and join us, but they were very distracting today and they weren't coming to the story. We'd love to try again next week. That would be a great thing to tell the parents. Always end on a high note and give them a good note to start. It's like Ben was talking, it's like a compliment sandwich. You put the really good stuff at first, you put the bad stuff in the middle, and then you put good stuff at the bottom. So, you're so amazing, your child is great. They had a problem listening today, and that's why I called you, but we totally want them to come back next week, and we love them so much. You know, like it's that whole, they're great, ooh, they're great, again. So, but like it's always important to make the parents feel good about their kid, remind them of what their kid needs to work on, and then end with, we love your child, we want them to come back. We care about them, you know. So Ben always calls it a compliment sandwich. He goes, you always compliment sandwich. Now makes me think like, how does he do that to me? Yeah. Compliment, change this, compliment. That's what I was thinking. Yeah, it just makes people feel better about like, not about correction, but it makes them feel better about their kids when you're like, you're amazing, change this. They're amazing. Like, just makes it feel good. So use that policy to, like, if you have to call parents, make sure you use that for them. Miss Shelley's really enjoying this. Okay. Shelley, come back. All right, so the third child I want to talk about, we only have 4 children total. So the third child I want to talk about is the chatty child. You guys probably have kids in your class who are just little chatterboxes who love to share their side of a story, who love to talk your ear off. They just love it. And they will have a response for everything, even if you're not asking a question. And that's the chatty children. And so I wanted to talk about them for a second because it's important we know how to deal with them as well. As the chatty children are the ones that seem to be talking always, no matter how much you redirect or try to get them to focus. Even if you're like, hey, we're going to focus on the story, they'll be like, okay, and then they'll go ahead and continue to talk. It's not I don't like you, I'm going to talk over you. It's I'm so excited to talk, I literally can't stop talking. Like, they're just so excited. And so I wrote here, children are extra chatty. You can do a couple of things. You can stop talking and get really quiet. And so sometimes I'll do that. I'll be in the middle of my sentence, and if they're talking over me, I'll just kind of stop and wait. And they'll look at me like, why am I not talking anymore? Like, why are you not still continuing your sentence? And I'll say, I'm just waiting for you. And they'll usually get real quiet. And you're like, okay, great. Thank you. I can see you're listening now. And then you go ahead and you start again. And if they continue talking, quiet down again. That's one thing you can do with the chatty children, and we all have chatty children. Number 2, you can move closer to the child, or you can move the child right next to you. So one of my number 1 classroom management teaching strategies I used was proximity. That was my favorite classroom management strategy, because when I was teaching, I had 4 really bad behaviors in my classroom, like all the time, awful behaviors, like the worst. And so what I did is I sat in a rocking chair when I was on the carpet, and I sat one right here on my right side so that they couldn't see the other one on my left side. So I sat one here, and I sat one here on my other side. And what I would do while I was teaching, if they started talking, if they started joking or making things, I would touch their leg. I'd reach down, well, while teaching, I wouldn't stop teaching. I'd reach down and touch their leg, or I'd continue teaching and look at them until they look at me. I give them a look, and then I keep on teaching. But I don't stop my teaching to try to deal with them, especially when you put them next to you. I don't know if you ever had when you were like in school, if you were talking, the teacher went and stood right next to you while they were teaching, you didn't say a peep, because the teacher was literally like right here behind you, and you were like I can feel the teacher like right next to me. So the closer you get to the kids, the quieter they'll get, especially if you just lean over and like tap their leg or tap their foot or tap their arm and just be like, you know, you should be quiet during this time. And so proximity is your best friend. And it was my best friend when I taught, and I still use it for children who need a little bit more attention and who need a little bit more redirection during the story. I will still put them next to me. I'll say, I would love for you to sit by me today. That's what I say.
So were you the chatty kid?
No, actually, I was so quiet in school. I was the person that nobody knew. Like, my teachers would do roll call and be like, who is Tiffany? Like, they would not even know who I was. So I didn't say a peep in school. Like, I was very quiet, never volunteered answers, anything. I love to talk, just not in school. So I was not one of those children. But Shelly, you're like, that was me. So those are some of the things you can do. So you can either stop talking, get really quiet. You can move a child closer to you, or you can move close to a child. If it still persists, I would move them to a different part of the classroom where they can still hear you, but they're completely removed from the circle or wherever you're telling your story. So I would, if I was in the big elementary room and everyone's sitting on the little carpet with the puzzle pieces on the wall, if everyone's sitting around me, I would maybe send a chatty kid to the chairs across the room at the tables, just so that they're nowhere near kids. They can't talk to anybody. They can't look at anybody, because a lot of times they'll look at each other from across the circle and make each other laugh and stuff. That happened all the time when I was teaching. They'd give each other like glances or go like across the circle, like, they looked at me funny. I'm like, well, stop looking at each other. Like, it's difficult because they all get bent out of shape about something. So move them across the other room if they're really having an issue, but try stopping to talk first, and then try moving closer to them, or you then moving closer to you before you move them across the room. But I'm all in full support of moving them across the room too if they need it. All right. Last child I want to talk about is the shy child or shy children. These are the ones that come into your room, and I don't know if we have a whole bunch of these yet, but we will eventually. The children who walk into the room and don't want to say a thing, who will stand by the wall, or they won't talk to anybody. You'll try to ask them questions and they will just be like mute. They won't say a single thing, and they'll just look at you with blank stares. Those children are very shy. That strategy I talked about, like playing next to them, how I talked about with the crying children to distract them, that will a lot of times help the shy child too. If you play next to them, that'll make them be like, oh, that looks fun. Like close enough where they can see what you're doing. They'll be like, they'll keep looking over at you. And sometimes they just need an invitation. They might not come over, But if you say, hey, we're just playing over here. If you want to come, you can, and just continue to play. And if they come, great. And if they don't, it's okay. Sometimes it takes kids a little bit longer, but that's one thing you can do. Introduce other children to the kid is probably one of the things that helps too, because if you feel like you don't know anybody walking into a room, and I don't know if you guys are introverted or not. Are you introverted? I am introverted. Like in parties, I'd be the one to like walk in the door and like skim the wall and stand in the corner. Like I am a corner dweller all the live long day. If someone comes and talks to me, I'm great. But I get overwhelmed with a big group of people, especially if I don't know them. And so one of the best things you could do is introduce kids to that person. Like this is Aurora. Aurora loves to play with babies. You know, or like this is Esther. She loves to play with blocks. This is, I mean, telling one attribute about them too might help the kids figure out who they want to play with, especially if they're shy. So introducing other kids is important, and asking the child specific questions to hopefully engage them in conversation. So that might work too if you ask the kids, not just like, here, come and play with us, but like, so what is your favorite toy? That kind of stuff might get them to pull out of their shell a little bit more than just asking generic big questions, asking them specific questions, and like, well, how many brothers and sisters do you have? Oh, that's awesome. Do you have a dog? You know, stuff that they can say yes or no to. And then you can say, oh, well, what's its name? You know, and build up to more conversation. So that was the last child. So we had talked about crying children, non-compliant children, chatty children, and shy children. Do we have any questions thus far? I have a small section at the end, and then we're going to be done. Anyone have any questions about kids or behaviors or anything?
Should I give Rachel 3 warnings?
Rachel,
You didn't mention that, so I didn't know that.
you can give Rachel 4 warnings.
Oh, okay.
Rachel says yes.
She gets the warning. I need them.
Any questions about any child that you don't know how to handle, or any child that we want to talk about together that you're like, I don't know how to handle this behavior, or let's try not to say child's names, children's names. Let's try not to say children's names, but like a behavior that you don't know how to handle or anything like that. Y'all can think on it too while I talk about this next section.
Everything I was.
Yeah,
Okay.
because I've done several of the things that you had mentioned. And so, yeah, I don't really have. Other than sending them out of the classroom,
Mm-hmm.
we direct them someplace where would we have a particular, I mean, do we have a go-to place that we need to send them to? Or
Yeah,
just
because you
say,
don't want them just wandering down the hallway.
yeah, there's
by
several of them that
themselves.
would love that.
Yes, I tend to, with my kids, depending on how old they are, if they're older, I will send them all the way to the baby room if we have one, because then they don't have any friends to play with. Because one thing that some kids like to do is if you send them to a place with friends, they'll like it more. And they'll be like, oh, yay, I get to spend time with, the big kids this week. And that's not something we're wanting.
Yeah.
Kids to feel either. We don't want them to want to leave the classroom to go and hang out. Like, then some kids will be purposely defiant so that they can leave, which is not okay. So we send them to a room that's the least, it sounds awful, the least fun room is where we're going to send the kids. And so if I had, for example, Noah's like the dream child, never does anything wrong. But if I had a problem with Noah, I would send him to the infants through 2's room. I would say, I'm so sorry, you weren't paying attention today. You weren't doing what you were supposed to. I need you to go into the infant room. And so then he can just sit in the infant room and he can just sit there and think about what he had done. If you want to, you can give a time limit for it. You could say, I want you to go to a different room for 10 minutes, but I'm going to send someone to come and get you in 10 minutes, and we're going to try again. And that would be a good way to do it too. So putting them out of the classroom for a time period, knowing that you're serious, and then pulling them back in later and saying, we're so happy you decided to join us again. We're going to have better behavior this time. We're going to make better decisions, right? So you could always do that too. So to the room that's the least fun. The least fun for them. No friends, no people they could hang out and talk with. And usually that's the infant room is usually the best room for that. Okay, and now we have an infant room, so praise the Lord. Okay, so any other questions? You guys can keep on thinking about some too if you have any more.
Do they have any-
I have a request.
Yeah.
Just, it's a minor thing, but
Mhm.
the pre-K room is really kindergarten and under. Can we start calling it the kindergarten room?
Yes.
Because my kindergartners know what pre-K is,
Mm-hmm.
and they feel like they're too old for that room,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not.
Yep.
They're just smart enough.
Mhm.
Well, no, they're just super smart. But,
Mm-hmm.
that is.
They
my
don't want to feel
request.
like babies.
They don't want to feel like babies.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
giving them leadership roles is kind of hard because
Yeah.
everybody wants a leadership role.
Yep.
And so I feel like if we call it something different,
Mm-hmm.
it would help.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. That's a good suggestion.
I had one question,
Uh-huh.
and maybe I'm missing it when we go over the lesson,
Mhm.
but since we do it every other week,
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a part in this there that says, remember what we talked about last week?
Uh-huh.
And they'll say, no. Well, I don't know what they talked about last
Uh-huh.
week because I wasn't there.
Yeah.
And I wasn't at the meeting.
Yeah.
So.
Okay,
Can
so
I just put like an overview in there somewhere of what we had last week? So,
yes,
you know?
so there's usually a one sentence description in the review of what we talked about, but the puzzle pieces will help you too to kind of know, because like our big idea for the whole month is always the same.
Yeah.
And so God always provides. And so even if you don't know the story, you could look back at the puzzle piece. So the puzzle piece for last week said, God provides manna and quail. That's what the puzzle piece said. So if you're teaching this week and we're doing the water from the rock, you could say, remember last week when we talked about God providing manna and quail, and just read off of that puzzle piece. And that should jog the kids' memory about what to do. And if they don't, it's okay if they don't remember. That's normally with the pre-K age and the kindergarten age, they don't remember what you talked about last week. Like if you try to like recap more in detail, they'll be like, oh, uh-huh. Or like if you talk about the craft, what they did, and be like, you remember gluing feathers? They'll be like, oh yeah, I remember that. But if you tell them to remember the story, they probably don't remember just because they're kindergarten pre-K age. But use those puzzle pieces to your advantage. And you can even say, remember how God always provides in our story? God provided manna and quail. Like, even if you don't know what we talked about in that story, you could use the big idea to kind of help you. That would be my best answer. There might not have been on some of them. So you could be right on that review section. I try to include at least one sentence about what we had learned about the week previous. But I can double check to make sure I do that, because I think that's important, because we do have different teachers. Yeah. Okay. If you have any more questions, I'll leave like a couple more minutes at the end. I'm just going to breeze over this last little section. I just wrote, how can I be better? And this stuff is everything that I am implementing too. And it's always like, I was preparing for this classroom management training, and I was like, this is so helpful for me, because sometimes you just forget things. Sometimes you forget, like, oh, I can send kids out of my classroom, or, oh, I can do this with a chatty child, and I just had forgotten this, or, I know I can distract kids when they're crying, but I just kind of forgotten that I could do that. There's things that you just kind of forget because you're in it all the time, and so it's just helpful to have a refresher. So you guys might have known a lot of this stuff already, but it's helpful just sometimes to bring it up again and be like, all right, well, let's just talk about what we can do, especially when we've got more kids coming to the ministry. And we're having more kids in our classrooms, which is great, but that means more behaviors too. So we need to make sure we know how to manage all those behaviors when they come in. And the sooner we get to them, the easier it'll be for the rest of the time. If we try to wait until they're 3-4 months into church and then trying to fix a problem, it's much harder to fix a problem that's already there than something you can attack right from the beginning. I use the word attack lightly. We don't attack children. Like, attack is in, we can attack the problem.
Oh, I need to write that down.
Attack children.
Attack children.
Got it? Quote Tiffany, okay. All right, so I wrote, how can I be better? And this is for me too. I wrote, we have an enormous responsibility as children's ministry leaders. Sometimes we feel like we're just daycare for the parents. Sometimes we feel like we're just holding down the fort until the parents can get there to pick up their kids. But we are doing one of the most important things in the church, because there are statistics. I don't have them written here, but I will send them out a message later because they're important. There are statistics that show that there's like a 20% chance if kids meet the Lord when they're an adult that they can start to follow him. There's like an 80% chance if the kids meet the Lord when they're a kid that they'll continue to follow him into adulthood. And so if we get the kids when they're young to love Jesus and to know who he is, they're much more likely to be Christian adults than if we're trying to, as Ben is, taking people who've never heard about the gospel and trying to get them to be a believer. That's much harder to do. So our job as children's volunteers is so important, because we have the opportunity to form kids at their young age, to make them disciples when they get older, to make them Christians when they get older, where they really know the Bible, where they really have a relationship with the Lord, where they really know how to pray, where they really know how to worship. That's what our job is. And we play a super significant role, because a lot of parents are not teaching anything at home to their kids. It is shocking how many parents don't do any Bible stuff at home with their kids until Sunday. They think it's the church's job to take care of their child's spiritual growth. And it's not. It's not our job. Although we are important, it's the parents' job, but a lot of parents are not doing it at home. So I stress it's so important that we do the best we can and give the kids our best for 2 hours a week, and not even a week because we serve 2 times a month, but giving the kids 4 hours a month of our time and giving the best that we have to them, because we have an enormous responsibility, and the Lord has trusted us to teach kids for the next generation. We all have something unique to offer to our kids, and we're all important and valuable in children's ministry. So be confident in that you matter on the team. You're valuable for our team, and you're so important for the kids. Whether the kids express to you, which they probably won't express that they're grateful for you, but they will be. They're the children's ministry leaders are the people that kids invite to their graduation. They're the people that invite you to their soccer games and to their basketball games when they get in high school, because they want you to see how well they've done. And you are the people that can pour into their lives and make a real, true, lasting impact. I read this story that this one children's ministry leader, his son, this boy was going through a divorce with his family, and they went to court about the divorce, and he went to church, the boy did. And the judge said, "Would you rather be with your mom or your dad?" He asked the son that for divorce, custody reasons. And he said, "I'd rather be with Mr. Chris." And the judge went, "Who is Mr. Chris?" And he said, "He's at church. He's my teacher at church." That's who he'd rather be with than either of his parents, because he made such an impact in just the little time he had at church with him. So we have a big responsibility that we can be one of their best people to look up to. We can be their role models. We can be the people that they would choose to be with if they had to be anywhere else. And so we have a big responsibility, but it's a good responsibility. The Lord has gifted each of us to work with children because he has a mission and assignment that just we can give to the kids. There's something that Rachel can give to the kids that I can never give to the kids. And there's something that Peggy can give to the kids that I will never be able to give to the kids. And there's something, Shelley, that you can give to the kids that I will never be able to give. We all have unique giftings and talents for kids, and the Lord's specifically chosen us for this. So be encouraged. You matter. You're valued. And the kids love you guys. Okay?
I was told last week I was creepy.
Okay. Yeah, I know you. I know. That's the fun part of children's ministry.
Well, it's
Getting called names.
It's almost Halloween. That's what she's thinking. Maybe.
She's probably thinking about Halloween.
Maybe so. I'm going to take it that way.
She's that's what you're supposed to say. She was getting you ready for Halloween. Yeah, you're supposed to say that at Halloween time.
I'm waiting for them to say, "Michelle, you're so weird."
It's okay. They can think you're weird and still love you. And they can think you're creepy and still love you. I mean, it is a compliment. It's your own weird compliment.
That's my goal.
All right, couple more things here that I just wanted to speak about. I want to say our actions speak louder than our words. And so the level that we're engaged into our story is the level that our kids are going to be engaged in the story. So if they're worshiping at the front and we're just sitting down while they're worshiping, they're not really going to worship because they're going to see that we're sitting down and they're going to model our behavior. So if we're getting super excited about worship and we're worshiping, the kids are going to worship because they're going to see our direction, they're going to see our leading, and they're going to follow suit. So participate in the story, show that you're interested. If there's extra craft things, if you're not like helping kids like glue stuff and put stuff together, I always do a craft with the kids. Like when I'm in there, I just do one too. I'm like, let's see, what color do you want me to color my bird this week? And I'll just go ahead and color it whatever color that they decide, whether it's purple or neon yellow or whatever color they want me to color the bird that week. It's important that we participate. We show that we're excited about the craft too. We're excited about the story. We're excited about prayer at the beginning and at the end. I think that's really important. I wrote, we don't ever make a parent feel bad for their child's behavior. And so again, that compliment sandwich, if you have to call a parent in the middle of service, if there are problems that you don't call parents for, I'd rather you talk to me first before you talk to the parent, just so that I can hear about it, because a lot of times things will get like through the grapevine. So for example, if one of y'all talk to a parent, they'll a lot of times come and talk to me and be like, so my child was blah, 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 blah. Did you know about this? And I'll be like, no. Like, can you talk about it? Like, I just don't want to be in the dark on that side. So just let me know if you're not calling parents, but you are having like problems with a kid, come and let me know. And I'm happy to talk to the child and or the parent myself, because you guys shouldn't have to do that either. So if you do have to call in the middle service, compliment, need to work on compliment at the end, always a compliment sandwich. But if not, just go ahead and let me know, and I'm happy to handle it. That's all I had for that. We only serve for about 2 hours per week, if not less sometimes. And I wrote we should rush in parents to pick up the kids. And I know sometimes we can hear people out in the lobby. I know that we hear people out in the lobby and stuff, but it's important that if parents need prayer, if parents need adult time for just a couple of minutes, that we give them that space, because usually with kids, they're running late anyway, so they don't usually get to talk to anybody before service. So their only time to talk to people is after. And I had a parent come up to me probably, I'm not going to give exact months. It was a couple of months ago. And they came up to me and said, I feel like I have to rush and get my kids. There was somebody who was in the elementary room who had told them that they had been waiting forever and that they need to pick up their kids. Well, that made the parents feel horrible. And they were like, the parents were like, we're so sorry. And they came and apologized to me like 10 times. And I was like, no. Like, we are here to serve you guys. Take as much time as you need. If you need prayer, if you want to have a conversation, we want to make sure we're not rushing our parents, because this could be their only time with adults that they have all week. Could be church, where they get to talk with other adults. They might be stay-home moms or stay-home parents that are with kids all day long, and they have only 20 minutes of talking time with adults. And it's important that they get that, because they will pick up their kids. If it does become an extremely long time, have somebody come and get me, and I'm happy to watch the kids until they come. If you guys have to go somewhere, or if you're like, hey, like I have lunch plans, and like I've told people we were going to go out to eat, and I've been in here for 15 minutes and I need to leave, just get somebody else. I'll happily tag you out for whatever and just wait with you. So if you have numbers, like if you have somewhere where you need to be, don't feel like you have to, I got to cancel my plans. Just find somebody else who works in children's ministry to just watch the room with the kid. Okay. I wrote it's very standard to have 12 kids in a room with 2 volunteers. And so with this classroom management strategy stuff that we talked about, it's going to be much easier to have 12 kids in a classroom if we start implementing some of this stuff. It'd be very difficult without any systems, any structure. 12 kids is a nightmare. But if you have structures, if you have rules, if you have strategies for if this kid does this, I know I can put them in timeout. And if this kid does this, I know I can send them to the baby room. If you have plans like that, you're going to be good, because then you're going to know how to take behaviors as they come in. Always make sure we're releasing with tags, just as a reminder. I'm having the service team coordinators at the front when they're checking kids in to remind the parents to keep that tag, because a lot of times they're just throwing it away. And if we have to ever page a parent in service about their kid, they need to have that tag so they know what code their kid is. Because if they don't have that and we put up AXPL and they don't know their kid's code, they don't have the code with them, they're not going to know that's their kid who needs help. And it could be their kid's having a seizure, or it could be their kid is throwing up, or it could be that their kid fell and broke their leg. Like, there's some big things that could happen that parents need to keep their tag for. Miss Sheila's eyes got really big. But we haven't, like, this is the stuff that we have to be prepared for, that we have to kind of know how to handle. I know I mentioned it a while ago before COVID happened, but I do want to do a first aid CPR training seminar. Like, I can't run it. It would be something we would do with somebody else, but I was CPR and first aid certified as a teacher, and I need to get it re-upped again. So I need to go back to a training. If any of you would like to go and do that, I'm happy to. We can all work out a day and we can make it a fun type of a day. We can all go and do it together and go out to dinner after, or go out to lunch, whatever time they do it at. And then we can pay your way as well. We'll have the church pay the way if you guys feel like you want to get first aid CPR certified, because that's important that we at least have one person in the children's ministry area who is, because if someone falls and needs CPR, we want to make sure that we're equipped to do that. At least one person in children's ministry is equipped to do that. We don't need to have every single person equipped, but I think that's important. So if you guys are interested in being first aid CPR certified, let me know and we will book some times and we will try to pick a day that works with everyone's schedule. It might be in like a month or two or whatever, whenever we can find a good day that works for everyone, but we'll plan it out and give a lot of people time to sign up and join. And if you want to be a part, we'd be happy to do that. Okay. Right. That's all I have for you guys. Classroom management 101. Yeah.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe we need to go over who actually picks up the kid, because I don't think a brother or sister is,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, personal opinion.
Mhm.
I think it needs to be an adult or a
Mhm.
parent and
Yeah.
not a child
Well, I know.
or a sibling even.
Yes. Yeah. And that's something we should talk to our parents about at the door. I do think it should be a parent that picks up the kid, just because parental supervision is better than sibling supervision, and it's better if we release kids to their parents. And so I believe that's what we should start doing. If someone comes to the room to pick up their child and it's not a parent, I would just say, hey, we're starting a new system that we're having parents pick up the kids, just so we can make sure that they're getting into the parents' hands and not just a brother's or sister's hands. I think that would be the best way to do it.
Plus, it's kind of a security thing.
It's a security
I mean,
thing too.
anyone but the parents.
It's a
When
security
we get
thing.
larger, and,
Mm-hmm.
it tends to be a strange parent who.
Yes. Well, and safety is our number
You know.
one priority. And so oftentimes, and this is not with everybody, but parents are more inclined to watch their kids than a brother or sister is. And so it'd be I feel like a lot safer to have a parent take their kid out, because then they would know their kid is released from children's ministry. Because sometimes if a brother or sister takes them out of children's ministry, then it's like, okay, is my kid in children's ministry? Are they not in children's ministry? Are they running through the church? Where are they? So it gives better knowledge for parents to know where their kid is. So let's just start implementing that. And at the door, we can say, I know we've been releasing them to you before, but we really need a parent now. We're starting a new system, and just make me the bad guy. Just be like, Miss Tiffany is making us start this new system and she's making us do parent checkout instead of anybody else. And so we need just a parent to come and get the kids. Make me the bad guy.
Maybe we could have Pastor Ben make an announcement when he's doing
Yeah.
announcements.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea too. That would make it a lot easier.
And that way the
Pastoral
parents-
backup. Thank you, Jesus. All right, do we have any other questions, concerns, thoughts?
Well, I have one other concern.
Okay.
Being in the baby room,
Mhm.
and this might be a problem in the future too with
Okay.
a lot of new parents, is when you get a kid calm down and then the parent comes back, you gotta start all over again. This kid has been screaming in your ear for 10 minutes. And you get him calm down, you distract him, and then dad walks in and just checking, sits with them or whatever. It doesn't matter if the kid sees them, they're screaming all over again, and you just lost.
Okay.
You know, they're upset, then they're calm. They would probably be calm the rest of the time, but he has to walk in and check on them. It's very frustrating.
Yep.
For us to be there.
Yes. So this applies to me and Miss Judy and Peggy whenever you do service team coordinator. I think just a nice reminder as soon as people check their kids in to say, all right, well, now that your kids are in children's ministry, all we ask is that, you know, you go enjoy service. It just distracts the kids if parents try to peek in and see what the kids are doing. And I know that you love your child. I know you want to check and make sure they're okay. But if we have a problem, we'll go ahead and page you in the service, and then you'll know to come. So as service team coordinator, so Judy on there and me and Peggy, that's what we can do at the front to kind of more monitor it. If we see people walking back there and be like, hey, well, once kids are already in there, we want to make sure that they're not being distracted by anybody else. And we're like, the people work really hard back there to calm kids down and make sure that it's a good class time for them. And so we just ask that nobody goes back there unless you're paged. We can say that. I don't know if Miss Judy's on, but if Miss Judy's on, that's for you too, Miss Judy.
Okay. Been awfully quiet.
Yeah, I told them
Here.
Oh, they're here. Peggy's like, you guys have been awfully quiet. Yeah, they've been on mute. And are there any other questions, even from Judy or Elizabeth? Any questions, concerns, anything?
I have another request.
Okay.
Is there any way we can get pictures, even if it's like coloring pictures or something, to go along with the story? Because kids will pay attention more when you have something to show them.
The felt figures.
Well, that's actually kind of distracting.
Is it?
It's because it's more of a game, and it's distracting to go into the other room too. It's a different place, and it's hard for the fidgety ones to sit down because they love the vines. The felt only keeps their attention for so long. And I lose my place in the story when I'm trying to. That was my second request, was do we have to go into another room to tell the story, or could we move the puzzle pieces and keep it all in one room? At least for this age, because
How did it go did you teach this past week or the week before?
I taught this last week.
Okay. Was it better? We had a baby room open. Was it better without the babies?
Yes.
Okay.
But we also didn't go into the other room either.
Okay.
It was just easier to keep everything in. And I had found some pictures and put them on my phone. And so I had Kayla telling the story and I was showing the pictures. I don't know. I feel like not having babies in there was the biggest help.
It's hard when you're trying to do infants through kindergarten. It's hard to monitor.
The kindergartners or anybody in between is like, hey, I can go do this because she's distracted, you know. And so that was a huge. I've never had a class. In fact, Kayla, this is the first time she was in the pre-K class, and she's like, I thought this would be harder.
She was in it with me one time.
What did she?
Yeah.
Did she? Okay.
Maybe.
And so I was thinking
It's
maybe
the
it
baby.
was her.
She said she was feeling overwhelmed with babies.
Yeah, because we
before.
had,
Yeah.
and we were pulled in.
She's not a baby person either, though. She was like, I like the older kids,
Yeah.
and so she did like it this last time.
But she did like it this last time because we have such wonderful little ones that just have some fabulous things to say. She's looking at me like, oh my gosh, they're precious.
Yeah.
You know,
I would
because we had a chance to pay attention to.
Yes. I would like, if you don't mind, would you keep on going to the story room for the next month and see how it goes without little babies? If it's still rough after that, I'm happy to move it into. But I'd like to have a good test window of without babies, because I know it's so much more complicated with babies and trying to get Caden to sit down while the story is happening, and then Esther will probably want to get up because Caden's up, and you know, all that stuff. So try it with just the 3-year-olds through kindergarten. Try the story in the room for about the next month. We'll see how it goes. If it's still rough, we'll definitely keep it in the room.
See, I think it's kind of good because it gives you But it's just a different perspective.
I think
it gives you something
older-
like to break it up.
The older kids, it would work better, and I bet you're right, because Caden was the one that it upset the most.
When he's so little, it's hard to.
Yeah,
it's
he's
just so
wise.
hard.
When he
This
goes down
is
to that
not the
room.
room I'm used to.
Yes.
What's going on?
Yes.
You
Well,
know?
now he won't have to. I mean, he has to get used to this train room, but he's going to be in a train room now, and so he should start getting in the swing of it in at least a couple of weeks, where that's going to be the room he generally walks into. But once you're all in this room all the time with all the friends, and then you go to a different room where you're kind of by yourself, it's like, oh, what's happening? But we have that new family with 4 kids, and they have a little boy named Lincoln, and he's 1, and so they might be able to play together, which might be really nice for.
I'm wondering
age
if we
level.
should switch out the slides to give the babies the bigger slide.
Yeah,
because-
Kaden likes that one.
Yes,
that
where
might
you
help.
have the
Uh-huh.
forks on top.
And that
Yeah,
other slide
that's
is
true.
perfectly fine for bigger kids.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yep, we can definitely switch them out. That's good
That
feedback.
that might give him a little bit more comfort.
Yeah, because I tried to get him to get on that little slide. He wanted nothing.
He's like, I don't know what that is.
Nope.
But he didn't want anything to do with anything.
Yeah.
Everything I tried to get him, he like
Yeah.
practically threw it to
Well,
the
and I wanted a littler room too, because I know we have to change diapers, and having to go to a baby changing table in a different room and take a kid out is just too much. And so in the train room, we have a baby changing table in there, and we have everything already good. So eventually we want to have all the rooms open, to have a infants through 1s room open, then do a 2s and 3s room, and then have a 4s, 5s, and Ks room, and then do an elementary room. That's eventually where we want to get to, but we're not at that point yet in our children's ministry. We're getting closer. We opened up another room, so we're getting closer. And that's what we're praying into. We're praying that we get more and more kids, and that's a huge blessing to our church, is more kids. And so that's what we're praying for. And we'll just continue to expand and grow, and our team will continue to grow as well as more people start coming in. And I'm very prayerful about people joining the team. I don't usually just try to walk up to people and be like, hey, join children's ministry. Like, if I see a gifting there, I might say something, but I pray that the Lord will work on people's hearts. And if he wants them in children's ministry, that he will encourage them to come and talk to me. And Elna is one of those people who came and talked to me, and she was, I feel like the Lord wants me to help in children's ministry, and I'm here to help whenever. And I'm like, praise God. Thank you. And so there's been a lot of those where people have been like, I feel like the Lord wants me to like help in children's ministry. And it's amazing. That's an answer to prayer, because I do pray that often. So, yeah.
I do have one question. All right, so say that I called the parent, texted one of the people in the sound booth, and like the child's crying like nonstop, and we can't handle them. But by the time like that we got the parents' attention, the child starts calming down, and they're fine. But by the time the parent comes, I mean, do we say to the sound system people, never mind, or just
So they'll probably put up the number anyways. What I would probably say to that is, if the parent does come and you know that they're coming because you sent the number, if you want to stand next to the door and be waiting, and if you have a kid in a different room or have their back to the door, you could just have there's always like that little window, that peephole window in all the doors. You could just give a thumbs up, and like if a parent comes, you could just say, we're good, and then just like wave them away. Or you could peek your head out. You could peek your head out and be like, we're all good, don't worry about it, sorry. And then peek your head back in and continue to teach. That's a good question. Other questions? Virtually?
I do want to say hi to everybody. I can't see them, but I just want to say hi.
I'll turn it around so everyone can see. Hold on.